And then I'm going to broadcast and just give a quick intro.
Okay.
Hi, this is Andy Port. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the City of Newburyport. Just wanted to invite you tonight. This is the Community Preservation Committee meeting of the deliberations that the CPC will be having on their applications this year. If you have any questions or comments and you'd like to weigh in for any reason, you can use Zoom's raise hand feature. There's a little button if you move your mouse to the bottom of the computer, and it will allow you to indicate with a little icon for us that you have raised your hand, and you can raise any comments or questions when the chair allows public comment. So just be advised that most of tonight's meeting is really devoted to the CPC's deliberations on applications. With that, I'll just hand over to the CPC chair.
Good evening. This is Mike Doucette. I'm the chair of the CPC. Welcome to our second virtual meeting. And I think we're working out some of the bugs, although I had some initially, and sorry for the late start. Tonight is our deliberations on the applications for funding that have been presented to us since February, and we've had two public meetings where the applicants had the opportunity to orally present their applications and the details of their projects and have discussions with the committee, as well as we received public comment at that time. The object of tonight's meeting and the major part of the agenda, which will happen first, are the deliberations. It is intended that that is a discussion among the committee members, followed by a vote on the various projects. Public comment will generally not be invited unless and until a specific question is raised by a committee member that we believe that an applicant who is also in attendance can shed some light on. In that event, if a question comes up and you are in attendance, you'll need to raise your hand in order for Mr. Port to recognize you and weigh in and answer the question for the committee member. That being said, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do before we get started with our deliberations, and that includes a brief review of the budget and the available funds that we have to work with this year. The planning office has provided us with the draft of a fiscal year 21 CPA budget, and it includes the revenues that were obtained from the tax surcharge locally and reported to the state, and the anticipated state match, which would come in November, based upon the estimate that we received from the Department of Revenue that is the likely percentage of match that will happen this year. And that percentage this year is estimated to be roughly 11%, a little more than 11%. And the reason for that is the economic impact that we've had in the spring and continue to have that is reducing the fees collected by the Registry of Deeds statewide, and that is the source of the trust fund at the state level from which the matches are distributed among the participating communities. It is hoped that the economy improves to the extent that those fees get more back toward normal and increase in the fall, so that the actual matching is north of the 11% that's been predicted. But for purposes of today's planning and the budget, we're using the numbers that have been provided by the state. And so we're looking at roughly, after we set aside monies for the 2 bonds that are outstanding from prior years and our administrative funds. Those are the obligations that we must fund going forward this year. The available monies for the applicants would be $971,460. Now, that is new money. It does not include the, shall we call, savings accounts that we carry, which is the open space reserve account in the amount of $729,966. I mention that because one of the applications involving open space acquisition has suggested that if they are approved, that their money come out of the reserve account, as it is more quickly available in order to get that transaction closed this year. Okay, the thing we do usually is have a discussion among the committee as to how much, if any, of that available funds, that 971,000, we would like to, shall we say, set aside as a cushion so that we don't get too close to zero in the fund. And that has, over the years, been a number that we've kept fairly small, so that the vast majority of the dollars get to go out and do good in the community. But still, it's always prudent to at least consider and establish a cushion so that we don't get too close to bounced checks, which is not a good thing. So I'd be happy to hear from any member of the community who wants to suggest a set-aside amount that would give them comfort to open this discussion on that issue.
Hey, Mike, this is Don Walters. If I may just start this off, and for perhaps the non-panelists here, I represent the planning board on the CPC. Mike, a couple of questions. You said earlier, and I understand that the match is down to 11.2%, but we've heard the term black swan events, and perhaps something will get even worse. Assume for one moment, whatever we decide in the subsequent minutes, that we have a reserve fund of X dollars, and for whatever reason, come November, when this money is actually appropriated, et cetera, we don't have enough money. Is there some type of a statute or law that basically says all the funding then is pro rata reduced by that percentage? Or do you know how that works? And I'm sure we may be in uncharted territories, because again, we're in uncharted environments right now.
Right. If I understand your question, number one is I'm sure you appreciate that's never happened.
I do.
Yeah. I am not aware of anything within the statute that talks about a pro rata clawback. But the funds that we're dealing with are in hand, except for the state match. And the 11% that's been estimated is a very conservative number. So I think we are set up to avoid that kind of issue. That being said, I'm not sure what would happen if it came time to say, okay, we've got so much money out the door, and there's less in the account at the time we're supposed to write the checks. But my guess is that we would have to reconvene and do something akin to a pro rata reduction and re-recommendation, and it would have to go back to City Council again for reappropriations, I assume.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Hi, Mike. It's Caitlin. Forgive me, but I don't think we did a roll call. Could we please do that for a minute taker?
Okay, roll call. I'd like you to unmute yourselves and give us a holler that you're here. Okay, Don, we just heard from you, so you're here. Don Walters. Yeah. Paul Healy.
Yes.
Ron Zimba.
Yes.
Okay, Jane Healy.
Here.
Mark Rosen.
Here.
Don Little.
Don Little here.
Okay. And Rachel, I assume you're taking notes, right? Okay. Did I miss anybody? Okay, there you have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, looks like we have 7 of currently 8 that are active. Okay. Okay, then back to our cushion discussion. If we were to just set aside, let me throw this out there, 3%, that would be roughly 20,000, 30,000. I'm sorry, can't even read my own writing. 30,000, and that's probably a little bit larger than we've done in recent years. I think we've gone as low as about 8,000 and as high as, well, distant past around 40,000 in cushion. So that's, I'll just throw that out there as a suggestion, which of course would then leave us with 941,000 to work with. Any discussion on this?
This is Paul Healy. I would say that the 30,000 is a good number to start with. I think with that and 30,000 cushion and the other 86,000 of undesignated funds, worst case, if the match drops off the end of the earth, we could still manage it if we had to.
Yeah. Keep in mind that the 971 includes that 86,000 in undesignated that's in the account right now.
Oh, right. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I
But I
was
still think
thinking,
we're good with 30.
yeah, okay. So what I was thinking was if we thought of 971 as our target and exhausted the target, then looks like we're down to a few nickels in the till, my father always told me that was not a good place to be. So
Very good.
yeah. Any other discussion on this? No. Okay. Can we then we got hands up here. Let's see. Okay. Is that Ron Zimba?
Yep.
Is your hand up? Okay.
Yeah, just to say that the 30,000 seems entirely reasonable to me. And I assume if we get down to toward the end of the session and we find we need a few thousand or a few hundred even, that might be available to be reduced a little bit.
Absolutely. That's what's happened in the past where we get down to it, that becomes well, we really don't need the 30. Let's try 20. And it has worked, and it's not cast in stone until the end of the evening when we decide what the final out the door numbers recommendation is going to be.
Good.
Okay.
I'm in favor of 30.
Okay. All right. If anybody else that's resistant to the 30, I don't see any other hands up. I keep getting a very small window with you guys in it, so let's make sure that I'm not missing anybody. Okay. All right. And Jane has provided the worksheet to us.
Excuse me, Mike, this is Don.
Yeah, Don.
Probably you or Caitlin knows better than I, but do we need to take a vote on these?
Yes, we can take a vote and go.
I mean, on the 30,000, I'm not saying, I defer to you, I just didn't know.
And we have not in the past, but certainly if we'd like to go that way, we can do that, or we can wait till the end and acknowledge that some monies have not been allocated, and that's what we're going to keep in our savings account, and make that as part of our roundup at the end. And so that leaves the 30 as a flexible target until we get there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Okay. So it's always a little bit baffling on how to proceed, either in gross with somebody talking about how they've allocated among the 11 projects, and then see how close everybody has got to their own list, or go one by one. Since the available funds are significantly close to the total requests, if we include the one open space request that may come from the open space reserves, maybe it's easiest if we go one by one, and maybe start with that potential open space reserve source application, to then know that is not part of the current monies going out the door, but coming out of savings. So let me make the executive decision and start that way, and see if it's a mistake. All right, that the application that I'm talking about is and you guys can't see me doing this, but I've got my old glasses on and about a 2-point type on this print that I have. So I'm doing the squint, and I'm looking at project number 7 on your list, the Artichoke River Woods Watershed Land Conservation Project. It's brought to us by the Newburyport Planning Office, and it requests a $225,000 appropriation to assist the team that's being assembled to acquire that land in West Newbury, which is adjacent to some land already owned by Newburyport over there, which will be preserved as open space through a conservation restriction held by Greenbelt, and protect that watershed on that side of the reservoir. So I'd like to open that application and that project up for discussion. And the reason, as I said, we're starting with this is the suggestion's been made that open space reserve fund could be the source of funding this particular application at this time, so that the money would be more quickly available if needed for a quicker closing, because we would be joining 4 other team members in that transaction, and we don't want to be holding anybody else up. So I'll open the floor to discussion. Jane Healy is got her hand up.
I would just say I would support fully funding this application, and due to the time sensitivity of it, or at least the potential of it, using the open space reserves to fund it.
Okay, and that is that you said using the open space reserves to fund it?
Yes.
Okay. Paul Healy.
Yes, I would just add that I'm in complete agreement with that, and I will make that a motion.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion from Paul?
Second, Jane Healy.
Okay. And Don Walters.
So I guess we're allowed discussion on the motion. So if I understand this correctly, we will be, the intent is to take $150,000 out of the current open space reserve fund, which is currently $729,000 and change. And then to the extent we fund the total request of $250,000, we would put $100,000 later in our normal proceedings, or is it the intent of the committee to fund all $250,000 right now out of the open space reserve fund?
This is it's a $225,000 request.
225. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry.
And I think you're correct that at the end of the evening, if you're considering both the open space reserve fund request for 100,000 deposit new reserve this year, that it would if you look at them together, you end up with a net 125 out of the reserve. So that's okay to look at it that way. I think for purposes of this particular application standing on its own, the source of the money is a more a practical consideration, and the replacement of that money back into the savings account wouldn't necessarily all happen in 1 year. But the open space reserve fund application it would be a start toward that.
Right, and if I may, Mike, just a follow-up question, and I do see some of the other folks have their hands raised. So does this require the city council approval? And the reason I ask, because if it doesn't, it seems that there's a way, at least for any reserve accounts that we so set up, it just happens to be that I believe we only have the one, which is the open space, then we're able to fund something. And I understand this is extraordinary, but again, I'm just trying to understand the process.
The deposit of funds into any reserve account it requires city council approval, and the withdrawal of the withdrawal of funds from that account would require an appropriation from that account, from that source, by a second city council approval.
Okay, thank you. So it does require it does require city council approval. Okay, thank you.
Right.
That's all I have.
Okay, Paul Healy, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the intent of the motion was to take the $225,000 from the open space reserve fund.
Okay, thank you. Ron Zimba?
Yes, just to confirm that the email we received today, about $300,000 being awarded to the city of Newburyport to help protect a 38-acre watershed property on Artichoke Reservoir. Is that related to this at all?
Yes, that's one of the pieces that they were looking for, in addition to this $225,000, with the other pieces coming from the state and from the Community Preservation Act monies of West Newbury.
Okay, so it doesn't really affect the amount of our deliberations then?
No. There was one other thing that came out of last evening's city council meeting, which I don't believe affects our deliberations tonight, and that is that apparently there was an amount within the capital improvement plan budget for 2021 for the city that was labeled for this acquisition, which was removed from that capital improvement plan by city council last night. I double checked with the applicant, and the project was not relying upon any additional monies from city general funds or capital improvement funds in order to accomplish the project. The city's contribution to the project will be this $225 that they're seeking from the community preservation funds. Any further discussion on this? Okay, I don't see anybody's hands up, and it's been moved and seconded to approve this application number 7 in the amount of $225,000 to be funded through the open space reserve account. I will do a roll call vote. Jane Healy,
Yes.
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Don Waters,
Yes.
Mark Rosen,
Yes.
and Mike Doucette, yes. Okay. So the net effect of that is to reduce that total request from current monies that is on your spreadsheet at 1.161. We can reduce that by 225 for purposes of what's left on the docket, seeking appropriation of current funds. Okay, that worked all right. I think going one by one should be the easiest way to go tonight. I'm going to go back to the top of the list. Next project would be project number 1. It's the down payment assistance program brought to us by the Newburyport Affordable Housing Trust. The amount of the request is $150,000. And I will note that it is the only application before us in the affordable housing category. Let's start this off officially with, is there someone who can make a motion to fund this in some amount?
I will move to.
We lost you, Paul.
I moved away from this computer. Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve $150,000 for the Newburyport Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay, and that was Paul Healy. Is there a second?
Second, Mark Rosen.
Mark Rosen seconds. Okay, discussion. Anybody want to raise their hand to discuss? Okay,
Ron's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Ron. Doggone it. Go ahead, Ron.
Just one question. I can't remember whether there was a time frame during which they would use this money, or whether it was more open-ended than that. Does anyone remember?
I don't believe there was a specific time frame because it depends on how active the programs are and how many eligible candidates they get for that type of of assistance. And in the past, there hasn't been, to my knowledge, a strict time limit on the exhaustion of a programmatic funding by the trust, but it is subject to their periodic reports to us that give us an idea of how it's going. And they are still technically under the certainly the annual review, where we could say, hey, this program isn't working, or we believe that that the money could be used in a better way, in a different affordable housing project. So that's my recollection of the application and how we handle it in the past.
Chair Doucette, this is Andy Port. Just wanted to note that Judy Timon, who's the chair of the trust, is in the audience. If she could answer any questions, she's there. So.
Okay, has Judy got her hand up? Let's see.
Judy, would you like to offer anything to the CPC about that?
She does have her hand up. Yes, Judy, go ahead.
Sure. This is Judy Timon. Just to let you know that we have already received an application for down payment assistance for one of the new units off Parker Street, one of the new affordable units. So yeah, the time frame is we asked for this amount of money because we do see those units coming online, and also the ones coming online on Kobe Lane, the Bashaw Farm units. So, and then of course we allocate them to anyone who is, selling any of the existing units that get resold, and a new owner comes in and applies for funds. But we've already received an application from someone for the money that we proposed that we would use this allocation for.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Any other?
And this
discussion?
is Ron. And
Yes, Ron.
one further question, if I could.
Sure.
And this is not the first time that you've come to the CPC for funds for this purpose. Is that correct?
No, it's not. No, we've got $12,000 remaining in this particular allocation that originally had at least 100,000 in it, if not more. But yeah, so that's what we've got left in that account.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Any other discussion from committee members? Any other questions from committee members? Okay, then we've got a motion and a second to recommend funding in the amount of $150,000 for project number 1. Do a roll call vote.
I got
Paul,
a point
go
of
ahead.
order.
Point of order. Yep.
Do we want to just populate them all before we vote? Because in case we have to fiddle with them.
Say that again.
Usually we don't vote until we've finalized all the numbers, I thought. So we're just proposing 150 for now.
You raise a good point that may come into play. In other words, needing some flexibility at the end of the process by moving money around, such that we have an interim vote now and a final vote at the end when we lock down the recommendation numbers. So Don raises a good point, and I think that's probably the better way to proceed, so that it's fine to go ahead and note by your vote that you agree with the amount on a preliminary, on an interim basis, and that you will, you may or may not at the end of the night agree on that specific amount or another one.
Chair,
Go ahead. Yes, who's
sorry,
that?
this is Andy.
Okay, Andy. Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to offer a suggestion. I think Don might be right too, that it might be easier for you to dispense with the motions on the draft review of, the columns, if you will.
Okay.
Just because you'll have to do that each time. And if there's no general disagreement with the proposed initial number, that'll allow you to get to the estimation of each project first, a little earlier, and then allow you to go back and formalize those with motions. I'm just thinking to save time, because you'll have to do roll call votes and so forth.
Okay. So I guess the way we're going to do this is you're going to have to raise your hand if you think we can do this by a raising of hands to find out in favor and not in favor. But it would just be for educational purposes in the amounts people seem to be leaning toward. I've got, let's see, Don Little's hand up.
I'm just proposing that, we can have discussion and reach consensus to populate these, but maybe it's time to go to Jane's worksheet too.
Okay, that's pretty much what I'm working on. Has Jane populated any of the? I don't think she's gone public with her number, has she?
No, I did not go public with my number. I didn't want to put myself out there quite that
Okay,
far.
not quite yet. Huh? Okay.
I do think it would be helpful. It's pretty much, I think, what we've done before is normally I'll populate. You guys don't see it, but I'll populate the spreadsheet as we go down, and then after we seem to have found a consensus, we go through and vote.
Yeah, and Mike, I think regarding a roll call vote, it doesn't seem like it's taking really any excess time, and I think it's just easier than you saying, okay, if anybody has a question, raise your hand. It's not the end of the world. So to go through the roll call vote now, just to make sure everybody's on board with that particular project. And then at the end, if there's any adjustments needed, we have further motions.
Okay.
I've got my hand up.
Yeah, who's that?
Mark Rosen.
Okay, Mark. Yep, I see you.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. If you look at the total of requests, including 80,000 to the Lighthouse Preservation Society, I don't think we have much of an issue if we approve everybody. So why don't we just keep moving along?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Goodbye. Thank you.
Okay,
Exactly.
is the consensus then that we continue to move along with a roll call vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And this is Don Walters for project number 1. Is that what the roll call vote is for, Mike?
Yeah,
Okay.
So we're back to project number 1.
Okay.
The motion was a full funding, and I'm going to start over again here. So going down the list, and by the way, this list I'm reading off of keeps changing, moving people up and down, so it's not going to always be in the same order. So, Don Walters,
I approve, yes.
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Jane Healy.
Yes.
Okay, Don Little.
Don Little, yes.
Okay, and Mark Rosen.
Yes.
Mike Doucette is a yes. All right, project number 2. That's the restoration of the 1930s fire truck by the Newburyport Fire Department, requesting the amount of $76,728. Is there a motion from anybody?
I move to approve the restoration of the 1930s Maxim fire truck, etc.
I second it, Ron.
Okay, so that was Mark on the motion and Don Walters on the second. Any discussion?
Actually, it wasn't Don Walters on the second, but I'm happy to second it.
I'm sorry.
It
That's
was
okay.
Ron.
That's okay.
It was me, Ron.
It was Ron. Okay,
Yeah.
Ron. Sorry about that.
Hey, we rhyme.
Yeah, okay. So is there any discussion about that? I for one would like to remind everyone that yes, indeed, there are several historic fire trucks in the Commonwealth that have received community preservation funding, and their communities are enjoying them. And I for one think that this is a good project, and that they've done the best they can to get, sounds like the only vendor in town that knows what they're doing and is willing to do it at this price. So.
If I may, Mark?
Is that Mark?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a little problem with this one. I think the amount, if it was, 20,000, I'd feel better, but I think $77,000 is a lot of money in respect or in perspective to how we spend money typically, for the amount of people who would enjoy it, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not really thinking favorably about this one.
Okay. Any other discussion? That's Ron Zimba.
Yeah, I am strongly in favor of this. It's even though we won't have a Yankee homecoming this year, I always get a kick out of seeing the old fire trucks in the parades, and I think it says something about Newburyport that's related to its long history and its respect for history. And it is not cheap, but it's a 90-year-old engine, so it's not surprising that it takes some money to restore to full use. So I'm strongly in favor.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Anyone else like to weigh in? Any discussion on this? Jane Healy?
I would just say when I read through the application initially, $76,000 seemed like a lot of money to restore a vehicle. But then I just got a quote for a tiny 2 dents in our car, and it was over $1,000 to repair. And so that kind of put it in perspective for me. So that's on a lighter note, but I do agree with Ron that it is a treasure. And so I do support funding it fully.
Any other discussion? Okay, it's do a roll call on a motion to approve in the full amount. Paul Healy?
Yes.
Jane Healy?
Yes.
Mark Rosen?
No.
Ron Zimba?
Yes.
Don Little?
Don Little, yes.
Don Walters? Don Walters?
Yes. Can you? Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. And Mike Doucette is a yes. Okay. 76, 728.
Excuse me,
Project,
Rachel, I'm sorry, Mike. I just
Yes.
have one quick question for the
Yep.
notes. Who motioned this to the start? I thought it was Mark, but the
That's correct. That was Mark.
Okay, thank you very much.
okay, project number 3. Newport Public Library. Okay, and that's for the HVAC work in the amount of $127,575. And This is also a historic resources project. Is there a motion, please?
I just had a question. Do we know that this type of a project is doable under the CPA? Because it seems that there was some kind of issue with that when there was the custom house.
I believe that if we're talking about the work necessary to preserve the archives, that is an eligible hook to use for the historic preservation or the preservation of historic resources.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Mike and Paul, this is Andy Port. I would also agree. I think that those are considered systems that are integral to the types of facilities we're talking about, museums essentially. So libraries and museums.
Okay. Jane Healy?
I would just say I agree. I took the time to look at the CPA project database, and there are many, many others in the state very similar that have been funded.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Then I'll make a motion to approve this project.
Hey, is there a second?
I seconded it, Mark.
Mark Rosen seconds. Paul Healy made the motion, and we can incorporate the discussion we just had and have some more from Don Walters.
Yes, just wanted to bring you up to date on a couple of items. Some of you may recall that I raised the issue with respect to the city's 2050 net zero goal, and I wasn't sure with respect to in-kind replacement of the same type of similar type of air conditioning unit, dehumidification unit really was in line with the overall goals. While I'm not against the total amount, I am against the method or process that's being used. I would feel much more comfortable if there would be some type of a engineering study performed by someone that is well-versed in energy systems, dehumidification, insulation, et cetera. So as an example, if there's a 2-ton system and if by them doing something else, there's a 1-ton system, then I think that goal goes to meeting the city's 2050 net zero energy goal. So that's my only comment at this point, Mike.
Okay. Jane Healy?
I was going to raise that same point. I remember Don had spoken about that when the applicant presented. And I didn't know if there was a way for us to encourage a second look at it in those terms or not. I support the project, but I would like to see it have at least an eye toward efficiency or an exploration of efficiency, energy efficiency.
Yeah, it is my recollection correct that when we had the presentation of this application that there was discussion about Molly Attenborough looking into it, and I believe the answer was in the affirmative that she had reviewed it. So
Mike, I would just point out that we have Mike Bartlett, who's the facilities manager for the city, in the audience. He's raised his hand. He may be able to answer any questions if this or others.
Okay, let me go to Mark Rosen. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I had some recollection that we had discussed this previously, and frankly, it's too late to do anything about it if you think about it. We have to vote on this yes or no tonight. We can't, as far as I know, put any conditions except when it comes to financing on approving this, as far as I know. So I think it's too late for these discussions.
Okay. I would like to hear from the gentleman from the city. Andy, if you could give him the mic.
Yes, Mike.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It's Mike Bartlett. I'm the facilities manager with the city of Newburyport. I'm here to speak to any of your concerns or answer any questions for you, but I can we have gone down, we're always looking to take advantage of energy grants, all that stuff. And unfortunately, with a system like this, it's specific to the archives. It's just for the documentations and to preserve everything down there. And it's hard to get, the problem with going with the energy grants is there's not enough payback on the other end. It takes too long for the equipment's expensive, and the energy savings it's just not there to qualify for any grants. Has been our experience in the 3 rounds that we've tried to go that route. And we have had this, we have had a retro commissioning of the whole unit. We've had we had commercial construction consultant come in last year and give us recommendations on not just the archival, but the whole library as a whole. And with what everything we're looking at with systems that are dating back now to 2000, they're over 20 years old. We have presented some of the HVAC equipment for the public library into our capital plans, but it was just, we really, looking at the CPA, we just thought this would be a really good route to help assist in getting all the work done that needed to be done with archivals. Whereas archivals is, it's I mean, you can't put a price on these documents. There's stuff down there that's stored down there that is irreplaceable. That's great that we have it there for the public. So this is definitely a big project for the library and for the archival system. But we have had people come in. We had 3 different companies come in and give their recommendations on what they would with what they would use for equipment. I have the proposal in front of me that we decided to present to you folks. It's with the company that knows the system inside and out. And a lot has changed since this was originally put in back in 2000 with the technology. And from everything that we've been told and everything that we've investigated on our own, we've done our due diligence is my point.
Okay, thank you. Any of
Does
the
anybody have any
committee
questions?
members have any follow-up questions for this gentleman? Let me see, Ron, your hand is up.
Yes, just to say that I'm in favor of this motion, and it's short and sweet. We have one of the best archival systems on the North Shore, and it's getting better and better every year. And this is necessary to protect it. Seems to me the next best thing to a no-brainer.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, then we'll do a roll call vote. Motion on the floor.
Do we have a motion yet?
I believe we do.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
okay.
Let me ask the note take. Okay, motion. I believe the motion is
I'm here.
to fund this in the full amount. Do we have a motion? Rachel?
Sorry about that. I couldn't get the mute to unhook. I don't see, you did ask, there was a motion, but then there were some questions and then the motion, no, there was not a motion.
Okay,
You had asked,
okay.
but it never
My
got
bad.
back.
I move
All right,
to
do I have a motion?
Public.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I
Is
move
that Ron Zimba?
to consider the
moving?
public library.
Okay,
This is Mark Rosen, yes.
okay. Is there a second, please? Anybody seconding the
I'll
motion?
second.
Yes, I'll second
Second.
Ron.
Okay. Okay, that was Paul Healy on the second, I believe. Okay, let's do a roll call then.
Yeah.
Paul and Mike.
Uh,
Sorry, this is Andy Ward. I just wanted to make a suggestion that everybody announce their name just to clarify who's making the seconds for everybody.
Yeah.
If you just announce who you are saying something.
Thank you.
No, I just
All
have, I'm
right,
sorry.
roll
Won't
call.
let me raise my,
So,
it's Rachel, sorry. I just want to, can you just confirm who motioned in a bit? Who motioned?
okay. I believe it was
It was
Ron
me,
Zimba
Mark.
on the motion and Paul.
No,
Say again,
I
please.
seconded it,
It
but
was Mark
somebody
Rosen.
kicked in it.
It was Mark Rosen on the motion, and Paul Healy on the second.
Thank
Correct.
you. Okay. All right. Now we're ready for the roll call. Ron Zimba.
Yes.
Okay. Paul Healy.
Yes.
Don Walsh.
Don Walters, no.
Okay. Jane Healy.
Yes.
Right. Don Little.
On Little, yes.
And Mark Rosen.
Yes.
Mike Doucette is a yes. All right. Okay, project number 4. This is the Cushing House Cobble Courtyard restoration, and it's by the Historical Society of Old Newbury, seeking $30,250 for historic resources. Okay, let's start off and get a motion now. Get that under my belt. Do I have a motion
Mark,
on
I'd like
this?
to- This is Mark.
Okay,
I'd
Mark
like to make a
Rosen.
motion that I'd like to make a motion that we consider the Cushing House Cobble Courtyard for $30,250.
Okay,
I
is there a
second
second,
that.
please? And who's
I
that?
second that. Ron.
Correct. Ron seconds it. Okay. Discussion, please. Mark, your hand is up.
I apologize, but while I didn't mean to have my hand up. But by the way, folks, if you want to speak, the easiest way to do it is to temporarily unmute by holding down the space bar. It's a cute little trick I learned recently.
Okay. Ron Zimba, your hand is up.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mistake. I am in
No,
favor of this.
no mistake.
however.
Just thought. Okay. All
I'm
right.
in favor, and hello.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I'm in favor of this motion. And it seems to me that the Cushing House has been very good at carving out small projects over, at least during my tenure on this commission. And I think they should be rewarded for that. They're doing a good job, little by little, in putting together that complex of buildings. It's not just the museum building anymore. It's there's a lot more to it than, and I'm in favor.
This is Mike Doucette. I'd just like to weigh in that the applications that have been recommended for funding in the past to this organization have gone well, and the product is excellent in my opinion. Any other comments? Okay, then I think we're ready for a vote. We'll do another roll call. Start with Paul Healy.
Yes.
Ron Zimba.
Yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
okay, Mark Rosen, Mark Rosen? Did we lose Mark?
He's still on mute.
Can't tell from. Yeah, he's still muted. Hit the space bar, Mark. One more try. Mark Rosen, you
You guys
there?
looking for me? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had to leave
That's
the
all
room
right.
for a moment. There was an emergency.
Okay.
You asking for a vote?
We're voting, right?
Yeah, I'm a yes.
Okay, and Mike Doucette is a yes. Okay, that's next application is number 5, the Open Space Reserve Fund. Requested to put in the savings, and in this case, it would be to start the ball replacing the amount of funding we set aside now for the Artichoke Reservation land in the amount of $100,000. Like a motion to approve from someone? Paul Healy?
Yeah, actually, I'd like to make a motion to approve 125,000 to the Open Space Fund.
Okay. Is there a second?
Mark Rosen seconds.
Okay, Mark Rosen seconds. Okay, any discussion? Jane Healy?
Mike Don Walters. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Looking across the line. Don?
Yes.
Don Walters.
Quick. Can you hear me? A quick question. I realize that we can reduce amounts, but obviously by this motion, we're allowed to increase amounts for any of the requests. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Or is it only applicable if there's a reserve fund that you're allowed to increase?
I don't believe we have any rule to that effect. No. It is
Thank you.
seldom done. It is seldom done outside of a reserve, but it has been done before on specific appropriations
thank
as
you.
well. Okay. Jane Healy.
I would just like to prefer to get through them all before I support an increase in funding of this application.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Paul.
I'll go along with Jane, and I'll change my motion to just approving 100,000 to the Open Space Reserve Fund.
Okay, so Paul has withdrawn his.
Increasing.
Okay. Paul has withdrawn his original motion and amended it to approve in the amount of 100,000. Is there a second to that?
Second. Ron.
And who is that? That's Ron. Okay.
Ron.
Good. Thanks, Ron. Any other discussion on the amended motion of approval in the amount of $100,000? Okay, let's do a roll call. Start with Paul Healy.
Yes.
Don Walters.
Yes.
Ron Zimba.
Yes.
Don Little.
Don Little, yes.
Jane Healy.
Yes.
Okay. Did I call Don Walters yet?
You did. You did.
I did. Okay, well, we can let you
And I
vote
said
twice, I guess. Oh, okay. Mark
Stuff in the
Rosen,
ballot box.
right. Mark Rosen.
Yes.
Mark, okay, and Mike Doucette votes yes. Okay, next application is the Clipper City, it's number 6, the Clipper City Rail Trail, closing the gaps by the Newburyport Planning Office. Requested amount is $250,000. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a
Paul,
motion to approve. Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the 250,000 for this project.
Okay, second, please.
I'll second it, Ron.
Ron Zimba seconds. Okay, open for discussion. Jane Healy.
As I imagine most of us, if not all of us, have seen the letters come in through the letters to the editor, as well as some emails going back and forth. And I would just, many of you probably are not aware, none of you are aware other than Mike. I've had a few conversations with Councilor Eigenman about this application over the last several weeks. And you might have seen in Caitlin's email a number of questions sent to Jordy and his responses to them. Those questions were from me, and they were a product of my conversations with Councilor Eigenman. And I'd just like to say, as much as I very much appreciate hearing from Councilor Eigenman and the time he has spent talking to me about the issue. However, that said, I believe that the answers that Jordy provided, they satisfy me in terms of the application funding request. And so I fully support the $250,000 funding.
Okay,
Ron,
Don
I
Walters.
agree with you.
Oh, Ron Zimba, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, just to say that I agree with Jane 100%.
Okay. Don Walters.
I have one question with respect to the funds. How much of these funds are allocated to construction, and how much to actual continuing design effort? And the reason I ask this question, to the extent Andy or Jordy wants to answer, or one of the committee members, is my concern, and there has been some items in the past, if something gets dragged out and then there's some laws change or something changes, or you know, there's another sea level rise, you got to go back and redesign something. So my concern on this, my only concern, and as Jane said, I'm very well of the pros and cons, and et cetera, but so my only comment is on the construction. How much of this is really for construction? Because my concern is, for any of the design, it's not obvious to me that some of that it's possible that will have to be redone. And I appreciate that the applicant will tell me very unlikely, but you know, never say never. Thank you.
Hey, we can get I believe if Jordy's still in attendance, he can answer that question for us. Is he, Andy, is Jordy in the audience?
He is.
Hi there, Mike. I am here.
Okay, could you answer that for us?
Sure. Don, I appreciate the question, and I basically agree with when the scenario when projects get drawn out for a long time, situations can change, and that usually ends up meaning more costs, whether it's through new survey or new design or new permitting or anything else. We are pushing ahead as fast as we can on the design phase of the project. We have just about all of our permit applications submitted. I have one more to write up, and have started actually securing some of those permit applications, such as the amended order of conditions from the Conservation Commission. And the design is, it's still considered a preliminary design, but it is well underway. It is in good overall shape. So the It is difficult for me to pin down, and I don't think we should pin down some sort of precise number on how much is going to be allocated towards construction and construction management. Part of that is, and these were in my, I tried to outline some of this in my answers to Jane, but some of this depends on which construction funding track we end up taking. Right now, we're sort of straddling two routes, two scenarios, two tracks. And they have somewhat different time frames, and they have differing demands. So just to try to be succinct, track 1, plan A, is to apply for this Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Action Grant, MVP grant, which requires a match. So a good deal of this funding would be going towards, if that application is successful this fall, would be going towards the match there. And I would also note that a portion of the project, as I think you know, is oriented towards a match for the rail trail initiative down at Parker Street and State Street, where we have the Complete Streets grant, but the current itemized estimate is over the Complete Streets $400,000 grant by about $50,000, and that is indeed allocated towards the construction phase, as we still have some funds remaining in the CPC allocation for super CPA allocation for the design phase of that part of the initiative. To go back to the riverfront section, if that grant is unsuccessful, we are basically falling back onto Plan B, which is using federal transportation funding, which is the same source of funding and the approach we've had to constructing the rail trail phase 1 and phase 2 through Mass DOT. Today, the Merrimack Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization actually voted to include this project as targeted for an FY21 advertisement on their regional 5-year transportation improvement plan. So that's a pretty solid backup option. That will take longer. That probably would make the project last at least a year longer, based on the review schedule and demands associated with Mass DOT and that federal funding. There are additional requirements, such as right-of-way requirements and other types of reviews and checklists and reports, which require some additional funding on the design side. So we need to be flexible in how this funding is allocated in the coming months, depending on which track we take. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks, Jordy. Any follow-up questions for Jordy? Any other discussion? Okay, then the motion on the floor is to recommend approval of this project in the full amount of $250,000. Take a roll call. Don Walters.
Present.
Ron Zimba.
Yes.
Jane Healy.
Yes.
Paul Healy.
Yes.
Don Little.
Don Little, yes.
Don Walters.
I vote present, Mike. So
yes,
present means I'm not voting yes, I'm not voting no. I'm not abstaining because I'm here. So it just
okay.
It just acknowledges that. Hopefully that's part of our rules of order. Thank you.
Okay. Mark Rosen.
Yes.
And Mike Doucette votes yes. Okay, we've already taken care of number 7. Moving on to project number 8, the heritage tree preservation by the proprietors of Oak Hill Cemetery, seeking a grant of $10,000. Have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve this project.
Okay, that was Paul Healy.
Yeah, oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
And a second,
I'll second it. It's Mark Rosen.
Mark Rosen. Okay. And discussion, Mark, your hand is up. Would you like to?
I really think it's a no-brainer to go along with this request. It really is a gem in our city, and I wholeheartedly support it.
Okay, Don Little.
And actually, just a side comment that if anybody is looking for a place to recreational walk, that might be a destination.
Okay, thanks, Don. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, an enthusiast, yes.
okay. We had Jane, Mark Rosen,
Double enthusiasm, yes.
okay. Mike Doucette votes yes. Thank you, folks. All right, here we go. Number 9, Bartlett Mall Historic Restoration Northwest Corner Improvements. Request by the Newburyport Parks Department in the amount of $100,000. I have a motion.
So moved.
It's Mark. I'll make a
Paul
motion
Healy.
to approve.
Okay, it sounds like Mark and Paul were fighting for first and second. So let's call.
We're just trying to
call,
get the job done.
I know. Let's call it Paul as the first motion and Mark as a second. Discussion, please. Okay, then I guess, wait, we have a hand up, Jane? Do we have a hand up?
My hand was up and then it was down. I support this project, and if the applicant is listening, I'd love to see something in the future about cleaning the frog pond as well. I know we supported an application that was sort of a pilot project, but it'd be nice to have those waters looking and smelling better.
Here,
That's
here.
all.
Okay, anybody else on discussion? Okay, then I guess we're ready for a vote. Roll call, Paul Healy,
Yes.
Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
Mark Rosen,
Yes.
Mike Doucette votes yes. Did I get everybody on that one? Okay, I guess I did. All right. Project number 10. First Guardian Statute by the Lighthouse Preservation Society, requested $80,000. Is there a motion?
Mike,
Paul?
this is Paul Healy. Going through that one again, I wasn't, it seemed like there were too many unknowns in that one, that, you know, like where it was, what it was, why it was, you know,
Let's,
it
for
didn't,
purposes of
We have to
discussion,
have a
do we have a
motion.
motion? Yeah.
I would
So does
like to
somebody
make
want
a
to-
motion. It's Mark Rosen. Mark Rosen here. I will move that we consider the request from the Forest Guardians
Okay.
Lighthouse Preservation.
Okay. Is there a second?
Jane Healy, second.
Okay. Now we got some discussion. Paul Healy, you're up again.
yes, I just didn't, I could not go along with this project. There just wasn't enough specifics in it for me.
Okay. Anyone else? Ron, Zimba?
I agree with Paul, and I think that it's not so much a matter of, for me, it's that this is not quite ready for us yet.
Right.
There are too many unknowns. Maybe, Paul, you're saying the same thing. I am, but we're not ready for this yet. We need more information on the location, on the actual content of the statue, etc. So I'm not inclined to support this motion.
Okay. Any other discussion? Let's see. Jane Healy?
I just like to, I agree with the previous comments and would like to add that when the applicant was presenting the application, we had talked about the need for dialogue with decision makers within the city. And so that to me would also be very important if we were to see this again.
Right. Okay. Ron, your hand is still up. Is there anything more you'd like to add?
No, sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call. Paul Healy,
No.
Don Walters,
No.
Jane Healy,
No.
Ron Zimba,
No.
Don Little,
Don Little, no.
Mark Rosen,
No.
and Mike Doucette votes no. Okay. Last, we have the Perkins Park shade, application number 11 by the Newburyport Parks Department, seeking $12,062 for some shade at Perkins Park. Is there a motion?
Yes, I will make a motion to approve this funding.
That's Paul Healy making the motion.
Yeah.
And I bet we've got Mark Rosen seconding.
You betcha.
All right. Any discussion?
This is Ron. I'm going to vote for this motion. But I got to say, I'm old-fashioned enough to know that, to think that, you know, if you got a park that you're playing baseball and maybe soccer and other sports in it, and you're going to put a shade area in it, it just seems sort of counterintuitive to me. But I attribute that to my advanced age, and I will vote yes.
I'm not going to let you do that. Okay, Don Little.
Guess I just had a question for my fellow committee members. I just wondered about this being essentially tents, and it's sort of a temporary structure, whether it's the best use of community preservation funds. I know it's under the recreation category, but it just seems like it's a temporary use of the money.
Well, it's
I would like
a
to comment on that.
Yes, Mark Rosen.
Yeah, in response to that, I had the very same concerns, and it turns out, if I recall, that the coverings are replaceable. They're actually probably better than what you and I are thinking in terms of wear and tear and reliability. And it's primarily for when they have camp and there's young kids having lunch under these shade things so that, you know, they're not sitting on the grass out in the blazing sun. That's really the purpose for it. The baseball field is separate, the basketball courts are separate, and, you know, Perkins Park, most of you are familiar with it, I'm sure. So just wanted to respond to that.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, roll call. The motion is to fund the project in the amount of $12,062. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Don Little.
Yes, Don Little.
Okay, Jane Healy,
Yes.
Mark Rosen,
Yes.
Mike Doucette votes yes. Okay. Before we go to our obligatory bond support payments, et cetera, let's take a look at having populated the fields. Jane, where are we?
Where are you me? Where are we? What do you mean?
Just at with these votes and putting the $225,000 for the artichoke land aside, what is the total that has been voted to approve?
So far right now, our total recommendation is $856,615. When subtracted from the funds available, we have an unallocated balance of $114,845.
114,845. Okay. So this is to go back and look. Now the 114,845. If that were somehow allocated now, that brings us to the full 971, using the full 971.
Yes.
Okay. So from the 114, we can set aside some in our rollover to next year in our savings account, and then do what might be the committee's desire with the rest, and that's what's open for discussion at the moment. Don Walters.
Yes, thanks, Mike. I guess my initial thought, you know, when it's just preliminary, is to keep all these funds, roll them over for next year. I feel that the economy, funding, federal, state, et cetera, will be worse than perhaps what politicians, et cetera, officials are telling us now. And so therefore, I could see an uptick in requests next year, even because perhaps some private donations are not available. So in any event, that's where I'm kind of leaning right now.
Okay, Paul Healy.
Yeah, I would suggest that we increase the allocation to the open space reserve fund by the 25,000, just because it's so hard. You know, when you start draining the reserves, you really want to keep them back up there, because when you need something out of that reserve, you need a chunk of it. And I think we should put in the extra 25,000 now when we have it. Because as Don says, next year, we don't know what will be going on.
Ron Zimba.
I had no objection to that, adding to the $25,000 to the reserve fund. you know, it's putting it away just in another way. But I do agree with the point of the first speaker. Was it Don?
Don Walters, yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
I do agree with that thought that this is the year of the coronavirus, and we have no idea what's gonna happen next year. And it behooves us, I think, to be a little cautious about it and tuck something away for a rainy day. So I'd be in favor of putting the 25 into the open space reserve fund and putting the rest, where did you say, Mike?
It stays in the Community Preservation General Fund.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be my vote.
Mark Rosen?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I'm right along with Don Walters on this, and I don't agree on giving open space any more money at this point, because in percentages of what they already have, it's a very small amount. And in the spirit of what Don was saying and a couple of other people about, if we're going to forecast what next year is going to look like, I think we should roll over everything we can.
Okay, excellent. Any other comments? All right, let's take this one at a time then. Let's take if I have a separate motion for adding to any of the existing applications this year. Let's hear that first.
Okay, Paul Healy, I'll make a motion to add 25,000 to the open space reserve fund.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Ron.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Okay, let's have a vote. It's to add 25,000 to the open space reserve fund. Roll call, Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Don Walters,
No.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Mark Rosen,
No.
Mike Doucette votes yes. How'd that come out? Who's keeping track out there?
It was 2 no's. Everybody else was yes.
Oh, I thought there were 3 no's.
No, I think there were 3 no's. So it's
Who were they?
it was Don Walters, Mark Rosen, and wasn't somebody else a no in there?
No,
Raise your hand.
there were only 2 no's.
Okay,
Oh,
all right,
I have
all
two
right.
as well.
Okay, Rachel chimes in with 2 no's. All right, so that motion passes. We'll raise the application number 5 to 125,000. Now, from that, I think we can assume that the overage, that is that which hasn't been allocated, everybody is going to be satisfied to have that roll over to next year in the general community preservation fund. Now, is there more discussion on that? Mark Rosen, your hand's up? No?
I'd like to make a motion that we consider roll over the full amount unallocated to next year.
Okay, the full unallocated amount to be held and rolled over into the amount that we keep, right?
Right.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Jane Healy,
Excuse
yeah.
me,
Jane Healy is seconded. Okay. Any discussion? Paul Healy?
yeah, I wasn't sure, was that motion to move the remaining, what was it, 89,000 over to the general fund?
That was the motion, yeah.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Okay. Good, and Ron Zimba, your hand's up?
Sorry again.
Okay. Good. All right, if we could just review this on the active applications, I'd like to confirm what I believe we just did in terms of recommending approval of the following amounts for the following applications. Application number 1.
Point of order.
Yes.
Don't we have to vote on the rollover first?
We didn't vote on that?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, guys. Keeping me honest here. All right, roll call on the rollover. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Jane Healy.
Yes.
Okay, Mark Rosen.
Yes.
Mike Dissett votes yes. Okay. So it looks like what we have is application number 1. It's down payment assistance, 150,000. Number 2, restoration of the fire truck, 76,728. Number 3, the library HVAC, 127,575. Number 4, Cushing House, 30,250. Number 5, Open Space Reserve Fund, 125. Number 6, Clipper City Rail Trail, 250,000. Number 7, Artichoke River Woods, 225,000 from the Open Space Reserve. Number 8, Heritage Tree, $10,000. Number 9, Bartlett Mall, $100,000. Number 10, First Guardian Statue, $0. And number 11, Perkins Park Shade Tree, $12,062. All unallocated available funds will be rolled over into the community preservation general account. Okay, I'd like to confirm that docket by another roll call, and then we'll move on to the required bond payments. Start with Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Don Walters,
Yes. You actually called me already, but yes.
I give you 2 votes too. Jeez. Jane Healy.
Yes.
Okay, Mark Rosen.
Yes.
Mike Dissett votes yes. Okay, you can see on the budget that we're working with, we've got obligations that we have to, as a matter of form, vote to recommend that these appropriations be made by City Council. The first one is the stadium bond payment in the amount of $124,130. And the second bond payment is for Cherry Hill bond in the amount of $12,140. The third obligation which is really not an obligation. It's just the set aside to fund our own administrative costs in the amount of $12,000. Taking those as a group, I'd like to have somebody do a quick motion and second to approve those.
This is Paul Healy. I'll make a motion to approve those transfers of the obligations.
Okay.
It's Mark Rosen, and I second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
Mark Rosen,
Yes.
Mike Doucette votes yes. Okay. Now, do we have any miscellaneous business ahead in front of us now, I guess, that we can go through very quickly here? Yeah, we've got the approval of the minutes for 4/29. Motion to approve.
So moved. This is Paul Healy.
Okay, in a second.
Second, Mark Rosen.
Okay. I'd like to just say all in favor, raise your hand, but no, we'll do it this way. Okay, roll call. Don Walters,
Yes.
Paul Healy,
Yes.
Ron Zimba,
Yes.
Don Little,
Don Little, yes.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
Mark Rosen,
Yes.
Mike Doucette votes yes. Okay, the upcoming schedule, Andy, next month, do you believe that we'll end up on the conflict with the ZBA on that Tuesday night again and still be on Zoom, most likely?
Yes, one of the things, and thank you for asking, one of the things that we're asking, just because we've been hosting Zoom meetings and we want to make sure that they run smoothly for all the boards, it would be helpful to us if you do not schedule on a night where another board is meeting that we happen to handle. That way we can make sure that there isn't any problem with either a committee or board's online meetings. So I can display here the city's calendar. If you wanted to pick a date that doesn't have a conflict, that would be preferable.
Well, we're usually that fourth Tuesday. What's the fourth Wednesday look like?
Well, so I mean, at the 24th, is that there's no conflict right now on the city calendar, so we would not anticipate our office having any problem providing the hosting and making sure there's no problems.
And then let's schedule the next meeting for the June 24th. That's always subject to not being needed, depending upon what the business may or may not come up in the next month. So if we don't have any business in front of us, we can cancel that meeting and see what happens in July.
This is Andy again. If I could make a suggestion, Chair, that the committee also authorize you to finalize and submit a report to the City Council on the committee's recommendations.
Sure. Just run it by Jane and I, and that would be great. Jane, your hand is up.
Oh. Sorry. I'm fading here. I'm fading. This isn't related to our schedule, but I've noticed the last few meetings, Dan Cohn and Karen Popkin haven't been with us. Are they no longer members, or does anyone know?
I believe Karen has moved, and she's no longer living in the city, and hasn't been replaced yet.
Okay.
And I think that Dan was, he wants to be replaced, but he doesn't have a replacement yet. I thought he was going to participate until he gets replaced, but apparently he couldn't make tonight. So.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other new business?
Yeah, this is Don Little.
Yeah, Don.
I just wanted to quickly review City Council last night. Per the city charter, they needed to vote on the mayor's capital improvement project plan. Some of those projects included some of tonight's CPC projects, and some were eliminated from that plan. So I didn't know if Mr. Port could just speak to the process of whether the mayor's office can reintroduce those to City Council this year.
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, the process of coordination can sometimes be confusing, and we might wonder whether we're all heading in the same direction. There is still discussion going on about that. For the rest of the CIP is actually done on a yearly basis. So we project forward with the annual budget what we need, and we also project forward what's needed for the CIP. So these things will be revisited. I know that, for instance, with the youth services project and others, that there'll be continued discussions about those. For instance, that project already has a feasibility study underway. And so when that information, at the bare minimum, when that information comes back to the city council, the same questions will be raised about whether to proceed with a project of that category or not. So yes, they can be revisited, but I think frankly, because this administration has done a great job of bringing the CIP forward on an annual basis in a comprehensive way. And so while the city council may, not want to incorporate certain items right now, I'm sure that those discussions will continue in the coming weeks. And there's always an opportunity in the future years to revisit those projects if they're not included in this year's.
It was my understanding there were two specific projects. One was the Artichoke River land, which I believe might have been in there as a placeholder in case the CPA money wasn't approved, but I could be wrong about that. But the second one was the Fuller Field work, and I believe that Andy, you have to refresh my memory here. Did the city council ultimately approve the bond that we recommended for the track?
It's my understanding that happened, yes.
Okay, but is there then other funds that were in the CIP for the Fuller track that have now not been, or they've been removed from the CIP?
I don't know. I'd have to check on that. I don't know the detail off the top of my head.
Okay.
Again, one thing I think to keep in mind for everybody is the CIP is really, it's a target, essentially. It's not actual funding appropriation for the projects. So while there is a table provided for each project to summarize where its expected funds will come from, it very often will vary a bit when it's actually going forward as a project. Those funding sources maybe come from, different distribution or different amounts. Different grant sources may also arise that, provide another source of funding for that project. So again, the CIP is not, definitive. That's just a guidance document to make sure that we stay on target with the type of CIP and projects that we have to do in future years, and we don't, run haphazardly into things where we plan ahead.
Okay. And I believe the Parks Department was going to wade in on an update for us on the status of the Fuller Field project that had already been approved. So, okay, Don, you have anything else on that issue?
Oh, I'm all set. Answers my questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, new business, old business, funny business, anything? No? Okay, well, we can all refill our wine glasses now and move to adjourn. How's that?
Very good.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. I think our meeting's adjourned if there's no one else needing to say anything. Seeing no hands raised, thank you all and good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank
Night.
you, everybody.